Howdy once again, everybody, and welcome to the final episode of CFR Flashback. As I'm David Paulson alongside Dustin Edwards, and we're going to look back on the final performance of the 2019 Canadian Finals Rodeo. We've been doing that all week long and visiting with champions all week long as well, and we'll do that today as well with two of our champions, not one but two. Scott Guenthner in the steer wrestling, we'll meet him in a few moments, and then a little later on in the show, we'll finish off with the great Zeke Thurston, saddle bronc riding champion. But let's go back to that final round, Dustin, and talk a little bit about what stood out for us. For me, right off the bat, of course, Orrin Larson. And we visited with all of these folks throughout the course of the week. Orrin Larson, of course, this was that famous ride that he made on Zulu Warrior, and it was a famous ride. I'll tell you, I have never heard a crowd that wild, that excited, that electric over one ride at one rodeo. They were on his side. They wanted him to win, and he responded to it because it was a great, great ride and clinched the title for Orrin Larson, his first Canadian championship.
And then we go down to the timed event end, and that's where we had, of course, our team roping champions who we talked with Canadian champion healer Hunter Cook earlier this week in our flashback. And they were sensational again on Championship Sunday night. They jumped out. They were 4-1. Of course, the world champion turned Canadian champion Matt Sherwood on the head side. This team was great all week long, and they capped off their Canadian titles with the round win on this final night.
You know what I loved about that team? You take a 55-year-old veteran and a 20-year-old kid, and they were magic together. That was fun watching those two guys. And then, of course, we went to Kamloops, British Columbia in the barrel race, where first-year Canadian Finals rodeo qualifier Brooke Wills just had got off to that slow start, but then made up for it. And really, she and her horse, Famey, just hit their stride about halfway through the finals, and they were unstoppable, and she emerged as a very worthy champion.
And then, the man who we talked with from Louisiana stole the show on Sunday in the tie-down roping, and he talked about it when we heard from him last night. It was a very slow start, but a hot finish with a couple back-to-back round wins, and he was the fastest on Sunday, 7-2. Shane Hanchey, the world champion, and became on this day a year ago the 4-time Canadian champion, 7-2, and he had to be 7-2, and he was, and a sensational finish for him, a smoke and run, and we were all excited as he claimed another title on that day.
And then we finished off with Edgar Durazo, of course, the Mexican-born cowboy and great bull rider. And, I don't know how many people knew of Edgar Durazo before this Canadian Finals rodeo, but a lot of people knew of him after because he just won so many hearts. He's just one of those guys that never stops grinning. He is happy from start to finish. He had lots of reasons to be happy because he was absolutely spectacular at this finals. We've talked about the fact that he rode all six and just edged. It was close right down to the finale. I think it was something like 106-99 or something like. It was very, very close with those two guys battling. And of course, I'm talking about Jordan Hansen, who did in fact win that last round and won the average. But the overall champion was Edgar Durazo, a very popular Canadian bull riding champion for 2019.
It was super dramatic. Sage rode, Edgar rode, Jordan rode. The final three rides of the night were all covered as they needed to do, but it came down to the scores. And we were up there calculating, and Jordan, he had a great ride on a cool bull, but Edgar did what he needed to cap the night. And what a dramatic finish, because we didn't know who was going to walk out the tunnel as the champion. So Sunday was full of dramatics, and it was everything we thought it would be.
You're absolutely right. It really was. And let's talk now about steer wrestling, because, of course, that's one of the events we left because we do have our champion with us. And in just a moment, let's bring Scott Guenthner right now into the conversation. Well, as promised, we have with us our 2019 Canadian champion steer wrestler. And Scott Guenthner, one of the things that Dustin and I have talked about throughout the week is that the pleasure of this show for us is that we get to do something we didn't get to do all season long. Normally, I get to say a whole bunch of times, so does Dustin, hey, here's our champion, Scott Guenthner. We didn't get to do that this year, so it's really fun here to be able to say, and I'm going to say it again, just for that reason. Two-time and reigning 2019 Canadian champion steer wrestler Scott Guenthner. Welcome to CFR Flashback, and thanks so much for taking the time to be with us.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on.
So Scott, we've been highlighting the champions here this past week, and we're glad to have you here on this final show. One of the two-time champions, and you did it back to back. Before we get started, we'd just like to catch up with everybody and see how 2020 has been treating you, and how have you been keeping busy up there in Provost?
Well, 2020 was somewhat similar. Just didn't have roadies in Canada. I stayed home all the way I came home in March when COVID had hit down there, and stayed up here till, I guess it'd been about June 26th, and I flew down to Prescott, Arizona, is where I started my summer rodeos. I was down in, I guess, all over the States and rodeos from June till September 21st, then I flew back home. So my 2020 was definitely a lot different. Rodeos was a lot different down there this year. Some had crowds, some didn't have crowds. The entries are really high. I mean, there was like 120, 130 guys in the bulldogging, like every rodeo, no matter if it was a $500 ad rodeo or $10,000 ad rodeo. So competition was a little harder, just more of a beat, I guess. And it was definitely big drawing contest, especially with steers. There's not 120 steers that are all equal. So it was a little different of a summer, but it was nice. I got to be home, all calving, branding, getting cattle out to pasture. And now I'm home weaning, getting everything ready for the winter. So it's been a different year, but it's been nice to be home now that I have a son that is just turned 1, and so seeing him change has been a nice thing.
Let me ask you. For rodeo cowboys, maybe they're a little bit more used to not having a crowd than some, because of course we have slack, and at some rodeos the competitors are competing in the slack when there's a very minimal amount of crowd. But when it's a big rodeo like that, and it is a performance and there's no crowd, what was that like? What was that experience like?
It was different. And the crowd that was there always, they try to cheer as loud as they possibly can, but you can tell there's not as much crowd. Being I am a slack guy or have been in slack, I just kind of tried to not think about it as a performance. Everything was almost everyone was a slack. Just the performances are fun to be in, and it's the atmosphere. But I just kind of blanked that part out and just said as it's slack as normal. But at the back of your mind, you're still like, oh, there was really no crowd, or people were all watching it online is the biggest thing, kind of like this kind of situation. So it was different, but for time event guys, it's not a problem. Rough stock guys, it's probably a lot different not having a crowd. I was actually talking to a couple guys last night, and they said, yeah, this not having a crowd is really throwing us for a loop. And I'm like, well, it's nothing new to us time event guys. So
yeah.
Well, Scott, for our viewers, we know you now, of course, as a two-time and reigning Canadian steer wrestling champion. But maybe kind of talk us through the journey that has gotten you to those 2 Canadian titles. Myself and Dave included, we kind of watched you come up through the semi-pro ranks and go on your journey to the first CFR and then on to these Canadian titles. So, to the viewers, kind of talk about the journey that has gotten to this point to be now a 2-time champ.
Yeah, so I have kind of a weird story. I definitely didn't start as young as a lot of guys and didn't high school rodeo and everything else. My dad kind of just let me do my own thing. I played hockey, kept me quite busy. I didn't have really time to go to the arena, so I didn't start bulldogging until I was in my first year of college. Started in my second year of college. I started bulldogging up there. I'd been in practice and stuff here, but I was a little guy when I was in high school and didn't grow till I was in grade 12. So I tried when I was little, and I thought I was going to be almighty, but I usually just used the end wall to stop myself and steer. So I just kind of gave up and was like, I don't want to do it. And then, I went to college and was bored at college and went to the rodeo arena and ended up actually started roping calves, and then decided I want to bulldog, and then kind of just faded away from calf roping. That's a lot of practice and way too much timing for me. So went to bulldogging, and then I went through all the amateurs. I WRA'd and LA rodeoed, and then in 2000, and I guess it was 12, I won the WRA finals and was like, okay, I think I'll stick my neck out there and try the pros. And I went to, I guess, 2013. I went down to the States to rodeo down there with Tanner Milan. He asked me after the CFR if I wanted to go, and I ended up actually tearing my pec major. So I had to get surgery. So that was really disheartening, of course, and I was making my first CFR and ended up actually making a CFR, but I got replaced actually by my own traveling partner at the time from Canada, Jesse Laws. So that was kind of a, nice deal. If I was going to get to go, at least he got to go. So that was nice. But, and then, I ended up making the CFR a couple of years. And after I got my pec done and went just a full year in Canada to make sure that my pec was safe before I really went south, I went down there and so kind of just was steady building. It doesn't happen overnight, and but it's been a long journey and a fun journey. But I mean, I got kind of lucky last year. I didn't have the world's best CFR, which I never really have a very good start to the CFR in any of them. But having a new son 4 days before the CFR was really not helping my mind at the time. Probably wasn't really focused on what I need to be focused on, but we fixed that and ended up pulling it off. So it's been a journey, but it's been a different one, that's for sure.
You know, Dustin and I have followed your career, and actually we were kind of part of that Wild Rose Championship of yours back in the day, because we were the announcers up there, and both of us, I think I can say without a shadow of a doubt, said that guy is going to be just fine when he turns pro, and it turns out we were right. So, but I did want to say, you know, and you've alluded to it, the excitement of this Canadian Finals rodeo in 2019 actually started a few days before the CFR for you, of course, with when you and Becky welcomed into the world your first little Quaid. And how is Quaid anyway? How's he doing?
Oh, he's growing like a bad weed. We just put him to bed. Actually, we decided we probably need to listen to him holler and scream in the background or think he'd be on television for a few minutes. He's growing. He's getting big, runs around the house, causes a little commotion every once in a while, and drives his mother nuts majority of the time, but she deals with him. He might possibly be my son. We've come to that conclusion. There's quite a bit of genetics all back to me.
So you alluded to it as well, that, you know, it was a big moment for you, but it did probably change your focus just a little bit going into the Canadian Finals. I mean, you guys knew that the baby was going to come at any point, but that first performance or two, it had to be tough.
Yeah, it was different. I mean, I kind of have a routine of when I just go, go to the barns and, saddle and hang out with the, other bull loggers or whatever and warm up and kind of stuff like that. But I actually was trying to help Becky get Quaid into a car seat to get to the rodeo. And I mean, I was actually majority of the time late to getting to where I would normally be. So I kind of went to the rodeo and didn't really check the draw and stuff like that. But by the third night or so, or fourth night, I guess, we kind of had figured out, we got to leave a little bit earlier and, try to make it work. Or her mom came and got her a couple times just so that I could go down and kind of do my normal routine. It was a little bit made my mind go a little scattered, but we got through it. That's for sure.
Well, I think you were spot on with it when you said it's the fourth night, because as I look at the results from last year, you broke out on night one, so you had a really tough night. Then you went fifth place, and then it was night four. You jump out and you win the round, and things really started to change for you. I think you were 3-7 in that round, and things really, you really turned the table. So, I mean, from that point on, did you just get kind of dialed in and said, because it was an absolute knife fight to get to the Canadian title. You had a lot of guys that you battled it out with. So from there, it was all business for the last three performances, I assume?
Yeah, exactly. And actually, surprisingly, the first, second, and third performance, I usually don't place in any of the first three performances. So to place a fifth, I took that as a win. But, from about night four, I kind of was dialed in and, back to my normal self of, knew what I needed to do, relax, I still have a chance. And it wasn't that I didn't think I had a chance the first 3 nights. It just, I was maybe putting a little pressure on myself because I was like, I need to do well right now kind of thing. I mean, I had a little bit of a lead, but it came down to, there was like 3 or 4 of us going into night 6 or the last performance that had a chance to win the Canadian.
Let's talk a little bit about the horse that you rode at this Canadian Finals and the previous one, at least the last few performances of the previous one. And, of course, we're talking about Tyson, Curtis Cassidy's amazing horse that this year has been selected as the World Steer Wrestling Horse of the Year. And he's pretty darn special. And I know you've had a lot of good things to say about him over the years. But you two really match up awfully well. It just seems like you're a great combination.
Yeah, that horse is one of a kind, kind of like their other horse, Willie. Usually they say you only get one horse in a career, but Curtis got 2 of them, so that's a good thing. The horse is just, I mean, he's automatic. I mean, he kind of almost scores. Sometimes I pull, and I don't really need to pull, but I do it because that's a bad habit. But, I mean, the horse is real sharp off the corner and gives you a solid pattern every time, and he just runs the same pattern and gets your feet on the ground as quick as he can. And And I mean, and he kind of almost, you don't even think about what you're riding or what you're doing in the box. He just does it. And, he just sits there and he'll sit in that corner and wait for us here to, mess around the chute or whatever it is to get out. I mean, yeah, I've had a lot of success on him. I've rode him in the NFR, and I mean, everywhere I've rode him, I've pretty much won money on him because he's that easy to win on.
You just mentioned Willie, and I'm glad you did because, of course, he was probably one of the greatest horses of all time and a 6-time, I think, Canadian Award winner and a Hall of Fame horse who passed away just this week at the ripe age of 34. And I don't expect that you actually rode Willie, or did you have a chance to ride him ever?
No, I didn't actually end up having a chance to ride him. He was done just before, I guess, kind of right when I started going pro. He was just getting retired, or they'd retired him. I saw him last year, I think it was, when I was up there to practice one day. I mean, at 34 years old, that horse was incredible because he still looked like he was about 18 and acting like an 18-year-old horse. Yeah, I mean, I never had to ride him, but he definitely was one of a kind, they said. And, I mean, watching the videos, I mean, he looked, unbelievable. I mean, it was kind of similar to Tyson on, same pattern and everything else. It was just, you got to do your job is what, both horses are like, it seems like, is they'll do their job. It's, you got to do yours.
Well, Scott, a lot of guys, and I'm going to go back to the Canadian titles here. Not a lot of guys get an opportunity to win one title, and nonetheless win two. You did a back-to-back. Between 2018 and the 2019 Canadian title, is there one that stands out as a little more memorable, or how different were the journeys to winning those titles? If you had to kind of break down the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, I took the first one and I thought maybe I'll never win another Canadian title. So, like you said, you take it as only winning one is still accomplishment. I mean, both journeys are kind of similar. I mean, I rodeoed both in Canada and in the US both years. I mean, I won't lie. I made a lot of miles and kind of wear yourself out. But I mean, I guess 2018, of course, winning my first Canadian champion was probably, a little bit more of a highlight just because it was the first time I've ever done it. And I'd gone in 2 other times as season leader and then seemed to crash very hard in CFR. So it was nice to finally, do something where you're supposed to. So yeah, it was, 2018 probably was definitely the year I would have said that, was the biggest accomplishment. Last year was definitely a big accomplishment to win it 2 years in a row. Like you said, not many people do it once, let alone twice. I had some definite luck going my way last year because, I was kind of slow starting and doing, breakout and stuff. But otherwise, like the year around it, I went in both times as season leader. Both times were not easy years to make season leader. The year before, there was a couple guys really close to me. So, it seems like it's the same year over and over, but it kind of, because all my seasons seem to end and start again right ASAP, especially when you're rode in the States. So I don't really totally remember each season by its season, but kind of just conjoins as one. But yeah, I think 2018 probably was my the biggest goal or accomplishment. I've been trying to win the Canadian. My dad's won it, my cousins won it, a bunch of our neighbors have won it, or my relatives. So it was nice to finally do it.
Scott, I think winning the Canadian title in the steer wrestling has got to be one of the toughest things to do in all of rodeo, and you did it twice. And the reason I say that is because not only did you go up against 11 other really, really good steer wrestlers both years that you won, but I think both years and for the last number of years, after you get past the top 12 that make the Canadian finals rodeo, there's another 10 or 12 guys that are almost as good and were really close and just missed it for one reason or another. There's just an awful lot of really, really good steer wrestlers in Canada.
Yeah, that is very true. I noticed it a lot. Lots of the Americans, they'll say, we're going to come up here for the summer or whatever, and they hope to make the CFR, and they come up here and they're always like, holy moly, like we can't win any money. And lots of them go back down there and they're just like, we don't want to go back up there. Like it's tough. It's not easy. And like you said, the top, 25 guys, any one of us could win anytime you nod your head. It's not like, there's the top 10 and there's, the bottom 10 kind of thing. It's a tight knit group. And and there's, every year at the CFR, like the last couple of years, there's been 3 or 4 of us that have qualified for the NFR on top of the CFR. So, you're going against NFR guys, CFR guys. And so you're got the best of the best is what it comes down to.
Well, and Scott, it seems like every year a ton of the guys that have qualified for the CFR head right down to the NFR. So for you, winning Canadian titles and season leaders and having so much success up here in Canada, what kind of wind does that put in your sail as you've headed down and represented Canada at the National Finals Rodeo in Vegas?
It definitely helps going down there. I mean, having coming off a high or, a good win, definitely sends you down there with some definite, I guess, energy and enthusiasm to want to do well. Not that you don't want to do well anyhow, but just, promotes you to do a little harder or try a little harder. Last year I didn't have the greatest NFRs I'd hoped to have, but again, Quaid just didn't have the greatest. And then I got super sick while I was there, and so did all my entire family. So again, my brain wasn't where it was supposed to be. But the year before, going my first year when I won the Canadian, went down there. I felt like, it almost makes you feel like, I think I can, I could win the world, or I have a chance, or, I'm at the top. I've got a little bit of enthusiasm behind me, or, a little more drive than a couple of the other guys that are down there. But it definitely helps. But at the end of the day, you're going against the top 15 guys in the world. And like I said, any day they can nod their head and win. So, it comes a little bit of a drawing contest, but you also have to do your part, especially at the NFR, because you stub your toe and you go from 3.6 to 3.7, you're out of the money.
So let's talk a little bit about 2021 and what Scott Guenthner has in store. We hope, of course, that Canadian rodeos will be a part of that if we are able to rodeo, and I'm an optimist and hoping that will be the case. But have you thought about 2021 and what your plan will be?
I've kind of had to start thinking about it a little bit because my family puts a little pressure on me to know what I'm going to do. But yeah, I think I'm going to do exactly what I've always done. I'll go to my circuit finals in Montana. I made them again this year in January. Having Denver and Fort Worth already canceled, I won't really have to go down there, I don't think, till probably the end of February, the start of March, for San Antonio and San Antonio. So I'll probably come home and help a little more on the farm, and then I'll head down. I usually take a rig and horses and stuff so that I can practice and stuff while I'm down there. I have a couple of young horses right now, and Becky and Quaid will probably go with me again, and then I'll just kind of go from there. And hopefully, Canadian rodeos go again. So I'll be down there till about May usually, or April, and then come home and then back and forth across the border for the rest of the summer. But yeah, we'll see. It's I'm not really sure. I'm kind of optimistic like you. I'm not really sure what's going to happen in this world right now. So we hope for the best, but yeah, how it is what it's going to be.
Well, Scott Guenthner, we want to thank you so much for being with us. It's been a real pleasure having you as part of our final show, our final episode of CFR Flashback. And we want to thank you for taking the time to be with us. And through the magic of technology, Scott Guenthner is going to ride off into the sunset now, but don't you go away, because we're going to be coming back with saddle bronc riding champion Zeke Thurston in just a moment. Scott, thanks so much.
Thank you again.
Well, we said it. You couldn't have a more exciting and more perfect guest, really, than Zeke Thurston for our final episode of CFR Flashback. And Champ, it's good to have you with us, and thanks. Welcome to CFR Flashback, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on here.
Hey, let's talk a little bit. I want to get into something that you and I have talked about many times over the years, and that is the importance of family. Because I think when we talk to Zeke Thurston, family is so important. And I look back at your career from your steer riding success to the contract act of the year with the Thurston gang, and then on into your novice, and of course the amazing success at the pro level. But it felt like to me that family is probably as important to you as it is to anybody in rodeo. Am I right about that?
Yep, you nailed it 100%. There's to rodeo, you gotta have a strong support system and a family behind you that backs you, because you're gone long periods of time, and big drives and overnight drives and no sleep, and so lots of a lot of people don't see that side of it, and that's not the most romantic side of it, but it really helps when you got somebody that you can fall back on, and people that are in your corner cheering you on. And I've been blessed that I've got great people all the way around me.
Well, and it feels like rodeo is in the DNA. I mean, every single member of your family is is talented in so many ways in the rodeo world. And that too has to help. I know your dad, Skeeter, of course, loves to say that he's the reason you're successful. And we like to kid him about that. But he might be right, because the guy is, in addition to being a great saddle bronc rider, he's also a heck of a mentor and coach and another of those supports for you. So that's another element of it.
Yeah, I was sure lucky to, grow up that I had a dad that rodeoed and had a good career at it, and he knew what it takes, and how much time goes into it and effort. And like you say, I had a good coach at home and a teacher, and even to this day, I can call him up and ask him, about anything, and he's there for me, got an answer, or know somebody that's got the answer.
Well, I'll be the first to admit, it's no smoke and mirrors, Zeke, when you talk about your family. And I mean, I've known you since you were just a little kid, and we all grew up in Big Valley together. And for a lot of people, they know Zeke Thurston as a Calgary Stampede champion, a world champion bronc rider. But I think it's always fun to go back and kind of talk about the journey. I mean, you guys are cowboy to the core. But I mean, you took part in all elements of rodeo. I mean, you rode steers and you rode bulls and you roped and contract acts. So, I mean, maybe briefly kind of just talk about the journey to get to kind of where you are today. I know, family aside, it's been a pretty fun one for you.
Yeah, it really has. I, like you said, I grew up in a rodeo family, and I just kind of come up through the stepping stones of, riding sheep and calves and whatever, Then I started riding steers and started roping, and it all just kind of develops and goes from there and progresses. And then I went into high school and I tried my hand at most events and, roped a lot and rode bulls and broncs and went through the novice ranks. And then I went to college and in between that, I guess we were on the entertaining side of it. And me and my brothers had a little contract act, and we went around and got to do a bunch of rodeos with that. And that was cool. You got to see and experience a bunch of stuff at a young age. And, we got to do a lot of things that most people don't get to do in their entire life as 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. So that's, I'm grateful that we did get to do that.
We talk about all of the successes, and we've kind of run through a bunch of them. But the one title that had eluded you for a while was that Canadian title. And how big a relief was it for you to get that one and add that as a notch on the old pistol?
Yeah, that it was cool. I think that's as big as it gets as far as Canadian rodeo. That's what everybody works towards all year, and that, not going to say that the world title might be a little bit harder to get, but that Canadian title, it's not easy. I won a couple world title, or one for sure, before I got the Canadian title. I come close a few times, but hadn't got it done. But we did last year, and it was pretty special to me.
And what about winning that Canadian title about an hour and a half from your house? I mean, that had to feel good.
Yeah, that's really cool. You're almost local at that point, and all of my family lives around here, and so they're not far away. They could come in, go home, work during the day, and come back and cheer me on in the rodeo.
Zeke, I guess we're obviously talking about CFR Flashback to a year ago, and it's hard to think that a year has gone by since you clinched that Canadian title. And I mean, you had an unbelievable year. You finished the season, over $110,000 in Canada. That's some big prize money on the pro rodeo trail. And I mean, you had a great CFR. You were super consistent. You seemed to draw really well. Why don't you kind of go back and take us through what CFR week was for you? I know you won the first round out of the night and kind of finished with a first, second, third in the last 3 rounds. So kind of talk us through your 2019 CFR on the road to that first Canadian title.
Yeah, it was, like you said, a good CFR. I started off strong. I won the round on a Calgary horse there. And then I can't remember what I got. I think I kind of just placed, or kind of was just right in there the next couple rounds. And then I think I won another round. And like you say, I got a re-ride one round, and then ended up winning second in that round. And like you say, placed in the last round, but stayed fairly consistent and felt like I rode strong and felt like I rode, quite well, as and I guess that's what it takes. You don't have to win every one of them, but you gotta be consistent, and that's that'll win you a lot.
Well, and that consistency, you're exactly right, Zeke, because I think it was about 53,000 that you picked up at the CFR to go with 57 that you already had. So to get to that 110 that Dustin mentioned. So that consistency, how do you develop that? I mean, obviously that's something that is a very, very much a trademark of your career, but how does that come about?
I don't really know if it does, because I've been really inconsistent before too. But it's just, you just stick to the basics. You try to do the best that you can, you try to get a good spur out, lift on your rein, and you go at them, as hard as you can. It's a knife fight for 8 seconds, and hopefully you're the winner. But sometimes you're not the winner, but you brush it off, and there's more broncs to get on.
Zeke, I got to ask you because, watching you over the past number of years, it's been super impressive to see the things you've done. But when you talk about consistency, and, covering all your horses, when you start getting into, these pens at the Canadian finals and eliminator pens at the Wrangler National Finals and 4 rounds at Calgary, I mean, you've covered some rank horses, and you get by a lot of horses that a lot of guys don't. You ride, seems very aggressively. Like, what would you sum up your riding style like? And I mean, what's your mindset when you're getting on some of the rankest horses in the world?
I just, I just try to go at them, as hard as you can. And, the effort and try will that'll get you a lot further than in any aspect of life than a guy realizes. And as long as if you got bucked off, so be it, or if you rode them, so be it. But if you felt like you rode or tried, with every ounce of try you have in your body, whether the results, you should be proud or ashamed of yourself. If you give 110% every time, it's more often than not, you're going to come out on top.
Zeke, 2019 was such a spectacular year for you with a Canadian title, another world title. And, it would have been an awful lot of fun for Dustin and I to be able to introduce the 2019 Canadian and world champion at a whole bunch of Canadian rodeos. And of course we couldn't do that. It must have been tough for you not to be able to rodeo in Canada the year after having such an amazing season.
Yeah, it was. I would have liked you guys to announce my name a few times, but it was tough because I went and rodeoed in the States, and it was hard to get back and forth. And then on top of that, there was nothing to come back for, no rodeos and stuff. And me and my traveling partners, we were talking, we were like, man, that sucks, didn't realize, how much you would miss all these rodeos going on close to home. Like in June, up until the last week of June, and like, from April till the last week of June, I guess I should say, we're in Canada, for that whole time. And it's, it's so nice to go a couple hours from the house, get on a bronc, come back that night, do that 2 or 3 times for a weekend, whatever, and we really missed it. I know I really missed it, and it made it hard to see your family and get back home for them, and it just wasn't the same.
You talk about Zeke, we're in a pretty nice spot. Of course, we're all in Big Valley here, you and me are, and we're pretty central to a lot of big rodeos. I mean, sometimes we take it for granted how great our rodeos are within a short driving distance. But if you look back at 2019, was there a certain rodeo that or a ride that really stands out, that really helped you kind of clinch things up here in Canada and focus attention down south? Or was there a certain favorite rodeo in 2019 that really stands out for you?
I don't know if one's my favorite, but like kind of early on, like I won Ponoka and won quite a bit out of Ponoka, and that pretty well, if you win any money out of Ponoka, for, a substantial amount, you got the Canadian finals made, and I 40%ed it. And so I had that wrapped up. I just had to make sure I get my 15 rodeos in, which can be hard to do when you're trying to make the NFR and the CFR at the same time. But that was a big hit in the world standings and in the Canadian standings, because I think that was the only rodeo I placed at over the 4th of July. And I was one of the top money earners over the 4th of July for bronc riders. I think it was like second or third. And only placed at one rodeo. I didn't do any good at anything else, but I won 40% of Pinoca, won 22,000 or something like that. And, that was pretty cool.
Let's talk a little bit about, you went from the Canadian finals, obviously, as the champion in 2019, and obviously on a high heading down to Las Vegas, and we're able to keep it going and win another world title. Can you walk us through a little bit of that journey as well down in Las Vegas?
Yeah, it was awesome to, be as confident as I was, and felt like I'd been riding good coming off the Canadian title, to keep the ball rolling, go to Vegas. And I jumped out, won the first round down there in Vegas too. And same thing, that just kind of set things up. I got a couple no scores for the week, but I think I placed in every round that I got a score in, and won three rounds or something, and won another world title. It was that was pretty special.
Well, yeah, you ended up winning, I think, 2 more rounds after that. You got a pretty solid NFR. And, Zeke, one thing I know about you, again, since I've known you for so long, you've stayed so humble and all that. But, I mean, over the course of your career, you've won a lot of money. And, you're into the couple $1 million over the Calgary Stampedes and the PRCA and the world titles and the CFRs. And that kind of money that's available to bronc riders, and especially one that's at the top of their game, that's certainly life-changing. Kind of talk about the ability to do this full time and make some big money.
It's amazing. From the kind of money that we can ride at now, from just my dad's career, one generation ago, like we ride at, normal year 26,000 at the NFR and 12,000 at the Canadian finals per round. I think my dad, when he went to NFR, it paid 8,000, I think, and the Canadian finals paid 2 or 3. So it's it's huge, and then you got the Calgarys and everything like that, and we have a lot of cool things here at home, and land and a lot of livestock and things, and it's all because of rodeo. And I'm super lucky and blessed that I get to be able to do that, and that's how I make my living. You get to travel the world and live like a rock star and do all sorts of fun things that that maybe normal people wouldn't get to see. And it's I'm sure lucky to be able to do it.
You talk about the life of a rock star, and we get to call the rides of rock stars like you. And so Dustin and I were talking about a little thing we wanted to do today and have a little fun with it. And that is, each of us, all 3 of us, are going to pick one horse, one rodeo with Zeke Thurston aboard. What would you pick? Well, and I'll kick it off because I had the idea, and I'll say Stampede Warrior, final round of the Canadian finals with Zeke Thurston in the saddle. I think that'd be a pretty good matchup. Dustin, beat that.
Oh, I had to vote Zeke on Get Smart in the 4 round at Calgary. I don't think there was much better than that one. That was my pick. I thought that was an easy one.
Okay, Zeke, and it doesn't have to have actually happened. This is this can be a dream, or it can be one you've already made. But what would you pick?
Oh, I don't know. Like Dustin said, it's hard to go against Get Smart or something like that I've, been on so many times and made so much money, and even Stampede Warrior, I've been on her a bunch. But I don't know. I might have to go with Special Delivery, the stud at Calgary's from. I was 94 on him in Pollockville, and I got on him again in Newtown last year. It didn't go quite as good, but I'd like another crack at that one.
Well, that's three pretty good matchups right there. I would enjoy watching all 3 of those again. That's a highlight reel right there.
So Zeke, of course, coming up, heading back to the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo. Of course, not in Las Vegas. You're heading to Arlington this time around as the reigning world champion. So I know you're a few weeks away from heading down to Texas. Must be getting excited for the NFR. Kind of talk us through what it took to get to the NFR this year versus last year, and kind of the preparation here in the final few weeks before you go defend that world title.
It was a little different this year for sure. I didn't have a very strong winter, I did okay. I only went to 4 rodeos, 1 San Angelo, and stuff, you know, like I had like 15 or 16,000 one after the winter, but they started canceling all of them, you know, kind of at the end there. And so I didn't go get on a bronc until Prescott the 29th or 31st or something of June. And then I went 4th of July rodeo and had a really good 4th and stuff. And then after that, we kind of just, you know, tried to go to whatever they were having. And it was hard to win. Everybody was going to the exact same rodeos. You know, there's only so many horses that you can draw at that, you know, there's 2 or 3 horses that if you draw, you're going to win or place. And, you know, it seemed like if you didn't have one of them horses, it was tough to win, you know. Little rodeos that would normally 85 would win all day long. 85 would barely get a check. And so you had to draw good and ride good, but it was fun. It was I kind of got banged up a little bit more this year and was fighting a few little injuries and stuff, nothing major, but we made it. And I'm excited to go see what Arlington has in store. It'll be different for sure, but you know, I'm just pretty happy that they're having something.
Well, Zeke, I can tell you there's going to be a whole lot of Canadian fans that are cheering for Zeke Thurston when the National Finals Rodeo does roll around. And I want to thank you once again for being our guest today. It was a great pleasure having you with us.
Hey, thanks for having me on here.
Well, friends, that's going to ring down the curtain on CFR Flashback, our look back at the 2019 Canadian Finals Rodeo, and what better way to finish it off than with the saddle bronc riding champion, Zeke Thurston. Zeke, once again, thanks for being with us. And friends, we hope you will join us once again. Well, maybe next year when we'll hopefully not have to do this remotely. We'll be at the Canadian Finals Rodeo with Zeke and Dustin and myself and a whole bunch of other great people, and we hope you'll be there as well. Until then, thanks for being with us. I'm David Paulson alongside Dustin Edwards and our guest, Zeke Thurston, saying so long. See you down the rodeo trail.